Hello, disturbed listeners. We need your help in a truly terrifying way. A listener survey. Tell us all of your deep, dark secrets. It'll only hurt for a few minutes. You'll find the link below in our show notes. To show you how much we appreciate you, we're giving away 2 $50 gift cards every month. Remember to check out our show notes for the link to the survey. We promise we won't stalk you when we're done.
Picture yourself alone in the middle of nowhere, and there's somebody following you.
He went on his way, we so thought, and then we went on ours. But in reality, he really followed us up there.
On Deadly Nightmares, the true crime podcast from ID, listen to real stories of ordinary people stalked by serial killers and attackers.
Please, tell me we're not gonna die.
Listen to Deadly Nightmares on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
I could hear him trying to pry it open. Then there was a loud bang, and the front door swung open.
The man smiled and asked me to come a little closer so I could hear her. Every alarm bell in my body went off.
At first, I couldn't tell what it was, but then I saw it.
From Killer Podcasts. True tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello, and welcome back to the show. In our first story, a young girl gets an unexpected visitor. Narrated by Laura Lockwood, from Reddit user Stargirl Interlude LMR. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror.
When I was in 7th grade, I used to sleep in my parents' bedroom. I know it's kind of embarrassing, but that's what I did. Almost every night, I would sneak in there with a blanket and sleep on their floor. I was a very light sleeper, so any noise would wake me up and leave me up for hours wondering what it was. When my parents left for work at 5:30 a.m., I would crawl into their bed and go back to sleep. So that's where I was, sleeping, when I was awoken to what sounded like footsteps. We live in a townhome where our neighbors are literally right there, so at first I thought it was just my neighbors being extra loud. But then I heard glass shatter. I slowly sat up in the bed and quietly yelled, "Mom? Dad?" I was hoping it was just one of them, that they either hadn't left yet or had come back for something. But there was no response, just silence, and then footsteps. It became obvious to me that whoever was outside wasn't supposed to be there. Things started to get louder. I could hear scrapes and grunts and more glass breaking. I had a feeling a window had been shattered, but the person couldn't get it open. My parents put screws in the windowsill to prevent it from sliding, even if the window was unlocked. I knew it was a robbery. I quietly got out of the bed and locked the door. And then I called my dad. He only worked 20 minutes away, and I knew he would help me. My dad told me to stay on the phone until he made it home. The robber couldn't get in the window, no matter how hard he tried, so he went to the door. I could hear him trying to pry it open. Then there was a loud bang, and the front door swung open. He stepped inside. I could hear his heavy footsteps as he came straight up the stairs, down the hallway, and stopped. right outside my parents' bedroom door. I didn't know what to do, so I hid under the sheets and blankets on the bed, hoping that he couldn't tell that someone was there. With a big kick, the door to my parents' room flew open. He turned the light on. I could see that he was Hispanic, had on a burgundy shirt, and had the most sinister look on his face. My fight or flight response kicked in, and I just started cussing at him in Spanish. He must not have expected anyone to be there, because the moment he realized that someone was yelling at him, he dropped his crowbar and flew back out of the room, down the stairs, back out the front door. Once I couldn't hear him anymore, I hung up with my dad and called the cops. My dad arrived home a minute after that, and he wanted to go find the guy. We drove around the neighborhood, but we never found him. I've always had a bad feeling about the whole incident. There are just too many unanswered questions and weird coincidences. For one, our house is out in the open. Anyone could have seen him through the front, so why did he choose the front door? Second, he knew when my parents and neighbors left for work, because he had thought that no one would be home. At least I think so, given the fact that he left as soon as he heard my voice. Third, I found out maybe 3 months ago while talking with my family that our neighbors had been robbed before, but it was from the back entrance. Lastly, the robber didn't look downstairs at all, almost as if he knew exactly where to go, because he didn't go to the other room upstairs either. He only went into the room I was in, which was my parents' room. I feel like he studied my family and was looking for something specific when he broke in, although no one knows what it could have been. There were no cameras anywhere, and no one saw anything. So we never did find out who it was. I was just lucky that he was scared by a little girl shouting Spanish curse words.
In our next story, a nice elderly couple asks for directions. Narrated by Jarret Griffis from Worth Biscotti 5070.
I still think about this sometimes. And the older I get, the more I'm convinced that I had a very close call. I was probably somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. This would have been in the late 1990s, back when kids disappeared for hours with nothing but the instruction to be home before dark. No cell phones, no GPS, no way for your parents to know where you were, just packs of neighborhood kids wandering until someone got hungry or thirsty enough to knock on a friend's door. We lived in a tiny neighborhood at the end of a 2-lane road. The road literally dead-ended into our neighborhood. It was quiet, tucked away, and everyone knew everyone. I knew almost every family's car by sight because I'd lived there most of my life. Plus, that's how you knew they were home to play with. It was summertime, and I remember getting bored and wandering the neighborhood alone, hoping to find another kid outside. But no such luck. I was walking down one of the back streets when an old car rolled slowly past me. It was faded, almost puke green, the kind of dull color that had obviously spent years baking in the sun. Inside were an elderly man and woman. Both were thin, with gray hair. They looked over at me as they drove by, but kept going. I didn't recognize the car and thought it was strange that they were in our neighborhood. But then I decided it could just be someone's grandparents coming to visit, and it didn't seem so strange anymore. None of our streets actually had street signs back then, so they were probably looking for the right house. I was still moping along when a minute or two later, they came back. They rounded the corner and crawled up behind me, even slower than before. I got a bad feeling that was enough to make my stomach tighten. I stepped farther off the road into the tall ditch grass, trying to avoid the car. At this point, stranger danger had been drilled into us, and in my kid brain, I figured that if someone was acting weird around the car, the smartest thing to do was to make it obvious you saw them and move far enough away that they'd actually have to drive off the road to reach you. Then the car stopped beside me. I stood my ground over in the weeds and looked at them. The man hollered at me and asked if I knew how to get somewhere. I honestly can't remember where. Every nerve in my body was telling me to run. And my ears were ringing so loudly by then that I barely remember the conversation at all. I knew my town really well, though, so I'm sure I started giving him directions. Then the woman spoke from the passenger seat. I couldn't understand what she said. The man smiled and asked me to come a little closer so I could hear her. Every alarm bell in my body went off. I didn't walk up to the window, but I did take a couple of hesitant steps closer. I was still standing in the grass. They said they didn't understand my directions. I remember pointing down the road, trying to explain it again. Our neighborhood wasn't that big. It felt like a trap. Then the man said something that made my blood run cold. "Why don't you just get in and show us? I'm sure it isn't far." I answered exactly the way every kid in the 90s had been taught. My daddy told me I can't get in the car with strangers. He nodded. "I understand." Then he opened his car door, and I immediately backed away. He stopped halfway out the car. "Don't be scared," he said. "I just want you to show me where it is." I remember looking around and realizing how alone I was. This was the back side of the neighborhood. There were houses only on one side of the street. On my side, there was nothing but grass, a fence, and a ditch. Nobody was outside. I apologized and said I couldn't help them because I had to go. Then somehow my terrified little brain came up with what I think still was the smartest decision I could have made. Instead of running past the front of their car, I turned around and ran back the way I'd come, toward my house, which meant I was running behind them. If he wanted to follow me, he'd have to throw the car in reverse and back down the street after me. I figured that would look strange enough that someone might notice if they happened to look out a window. Whether that logic was actually right or not, I'll never know. But it worked. He got back into the car and went forward around the corner instead. The second I realized he wasn't chasing me on foot, I sprinted. It was about 3 blocks before I turned onto another street, then another couple of uphill blocks to my house. My legs burned the entire way. The scary part is, if they'd wanted to, they only had to drive 1 block around the neighborhood to intercept me. Luckily, I knew every shortcut in that neighborhood. I knew exactly which corners let me peek down the next street before crossing them. I remember slowing down just enough to look around every corner before taking off running again, terrified I'd see that faded green car waiting for me. Thankfully, it never did. When I got home, my parents commented on how red-faced I was. I made up some excuse, and that was the end of it. Or at least, I thought it was. For the next several hours, I stood at my bedroom window, peeking through the blinds. I watched that same faded green car circle our neighborhood again, and again, and again. Maybe they were really lost. Maybe they really couldn't find wherever they were trying to go. Or maybe they were looking for the kid who had refused to get in. I'll never know. What I do know is that I didn't feel safe walking around my own neighborhood for weeks afterwards. Eventually, life went back to normal. I started riding my bike again, wandering off with friends again, being a kid again. But every now and then, I think about that afternoon, and I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken just a few more steps toward that passenger window.
Stay tuned for more disturbing stories. By making it easy to sell, Shopify empowers millions of ideas to come to life. Everything you need to sell is already there from day one. They make it easy for anyone to get started. And it's so easy for a business to grow. All of the time they would spend trying to set up a selling platform is now theirs when they use Shopify. I've seen this firsthand with merchants I shop with. They started with only a few items, but now they have hundreds of items up for grabs. There are tons of brands that I buy from that use Shopify, and the checkout experience is always quick and easy to use. I feel good using Shopify because big-name brands also use Shopify to sell their merchandise online. I know what I'm buying is legit and that my credit card information will be safe. So bring your ideas to life with Shopify. I'll be watching. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business, so go make it one. Start your free trial at shopify.com/disturbed. That's shopify.com/disturbed. There are things in your life you don't want to be transparent, like your swimsuit or your search history. But when it comes to your wireless bill, transparency is everything. That's why Mint Mobile wireless plans have no gimmicks and no gotchas, just high-speed data and reliable coverage on the T-Mobile 5G network. And right now, all plans are $15 per month, even unlimited. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right with premium wireless for only $15 a month. When you make the switch, you can even bring your phone and number with you. I use Mint Mobile and I have had nothing but excellent coverage. I know that I can reach my family and friends whenever I want to, and the call won't get dropped. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/disturbed. That's mintmobile.com/disturbed. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/disturbed. That's it. There's no catch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, $180 for 12 months, plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Includes up to 20 gigabyte hotspot. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Now that summer is here and the days are longer, I find myself going for the old reliable Quince favorites. When I'm lounging around, relaxing, and listening to my favorite horror podcasts, I'm always wearing my Quince modal cotton t-shirt. It's so comfortable that you won't catch me wearing anything else. It's versatile, too. I can easily throw on a cardigan or a linen button-up shirt over it, and I'm good to go. That's why I keep coming back to Quince. They focus on well-made essentials that naturally become one of those everyday staples you actually live in all season long. And it's not just clothing. Quince has become a trusted favorite for everything from home to travel to everyday essentials. Not to mention that everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They took out the middleman to make it easier for you. So make your summer wardrobe easier. Go to quince.com/disturbed for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/disturbed for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/disturbed. Welcome back to the show. A tropical paradise becomes anything but. Narrated by Dacey Else, from Reddit user Mix Mothman Esquire.
When I was a child, my mother owned a campsite property in the jungles of Belize that traveling backpackers would frequent to visit the caves and jungles of the area. It was a beautiful remote spot in a valley surrounded by only a small Mennonite community and some local villages a few miles away. There weren't many roads, and the ones there were dirt. There was a main road that led in and out of the valley, or you had to traverse through the thick, mountainous terrain to get there. All of this to say it was extremely remote and hard to reach. So random strangers passing through was not the norm, unless they were explicitly there to visit the campsite. There were only 6 other homes in the valley that were reachable by foot. 5 of them were inhabited by the peaceful local Mennonite community, but one was owned by an American woman who had a reputation for being a cruel, vitriolic problem starter. We'll call her Cary. There were tons of rumors about her. One was that she lived in Belize because she was wanted by the FBI for murder in the US. Locals also said that she hired local men to steal and vandalize other people's properties for her. Cary's property ran parallel with the main road, so you couldn't avoid her when you left the campsite property. I'd always heard of Cary, but I had my first interaction with her when I was around 10. My brothers and I were friends with her property manager's kids, so we would all float down the creek in inner tubes and then walk back up the road back to the campsite. We all felt safe doing this because there were usually at least 4 of us together at a time. When Cary could hear us, she would often run down to her fence line and scream at us the entire time we walked past, no matter how quiet or loud we were being. She threatened to let her 3 large dogs out to attack us, and one time she chased us down the street with a gun. That was the last time we were allowed to walk back up the street without an adult. The story happened when I was 14. One afternoon, a female friend and I were playing in the swimming area of the creek in front of the main building of my mother's property. There was a huge rock that jutted up out of the water on the far side of the creek, and above that, the mountainside rose up at a sheer 90-degree angle, bulging out in some areas. It formed a sort of rounded jungle cliff that was impossible to climb up or down from, making the swimming hole and main campsite building feel secluded and peaceful. We were on the bank of the campsite, just splashing and playing in the water, when something glinted in the sun on the top of the cliff. I looked up and was shielding my eyes from the sun, trying to figure out what was up there when I saw something move. At first, I couldn't tell what it was, but then I saw it. Or him. There, crouched in some bushes with a black bandana tied around his face, was a man in dark clothing watching us play in the water. He was holding a machete, and he had the most hateful look in his eyes that I have ever seen. Ice-cold dread filled my body, and my heart plunged into the pit of my stomach. I just knew he was up to something bad. The man and I just looked at each other. He pointed at me, then with his finger slowly made a throat slit motion across his throat. I was so scared I was frozen where I was standing in the sand. My friend grabbed my wrist, pulling me out of it, and we sprinted back to the building where our parents were. My mom and her parents rushed out with us, but by the time we actually got back to the creekside, the man was gone. We showed them where the man had been standing, and somehow the adults managed to find a way up there. They found a discarded water up there, which made us all think he'd been there for quite some time, watching us, plotting and planning. It wouldn't have been easy to hike, get to that spot he was in without being seen if he came from our side, so he likely had hiked from the other side of the hilltop. If that were the case, he must have been surprised to have found the cliff there with no way down. My mother was convinced that Cary had hired the man in the bushes. To what end, we don't know, but the way he was staring at me and my friend makes my brain go to very dark places. And we wouldn't have been the only little girls to go missing in the valley. From then on, we were extra careful about where we went alone in Belize. Years later, after my mother had sold the property and we stopped visiting, we heard news from the area that someone had been found dead in the orange grove on my mother's old property. The death was quickly and easily tied back to Cary, but she was never arrested due to local police corruption. It all happened so remotely, and the fact that she hired a hitman made them look the other way. I don't know if Cary is still alive today or if she's still in Belize, but she is definitely someone to be afraid of.
Disturbed will return in a moment. Welcome back, listeners. One family finds a ghost-faced killer. Narrated by Sinn, from Reddit user MishimaBoy69.
I was driving to my grandparents' house with my mom, my fiance, and our 2 cats. It's about a 6 or 7 hour drive, depending on how many stops you make. We make this trip 8 to 10 times a year, so the route was nothing new to us. It had been a pretty chill road trip for the most part. Then, something straight out of a horror movie happened. It had already been dark out for a few hours when we pulled off the highway. We turned onto a long country road that would take us almost all the way to the small town my grandparents lived in. We were cruising along, listening to the radio, when we came upon a construction zone. One side of the street was blocked off with cones, and there were tractors sitting in the lane. They'd placed one of those movable stoplights, the ones where the red light is red for a really long time to make sure all of the cars can get through at the start of the cones. Of course, the light was red. I looked at the clock. It was 11:45 p.m. We were the only ones on the road, and I thought about just running right through the red light, but I decided not to. We would wait for the light to change. My mom was sitting in the front passenger seat, while my fiancé and our cats were in the back seat. After sitting at the light for like 2 whole minutes, my fiancé started to tell us something. She pointed out the window and said, "Hey, there's something. Oh God." She was so scared she started stuttering, trying to say, "There's a guy," but we couldn't understand her. Both me and Mom turned to look at what she was pointing at. I figured it was probably a mountain lion or some other wild animal you don't normally get to see, but it was too dark for me to see anything. Then my mom yelled, "Oh God, just drive." So I immediately locked the doors and started to drive full speed through the red light. Finally, my fiancé could speak. She told us there was a man fully dressed in black clothes, with a white mask covering his face, sneaking through the high grass, coming straight towards our car. He was on his hands and knees, crawling so that we wouldn't be able to see him. He was only like 4 feet from our car when she saw him, and I am so glad she did. We don't know if he was alone, or if he had any weapons in his hands, but it all felt like a trap. Like he was watching the cars pull up and stop, waiting to choose his next victim. We immediately called the police and told them what happened. They said that they would pass it along, but nothing ever happened. I'm sure the guy would have been gone anyway if they'd driven out there. When we reached my grandparents' house, we all felt pretty safe. We told them what happened, and they made sure all the doors were locked that night. I made sure to check the car to make sure that he hadn't placed a tracker on it. In fact, I still check the car every once in a while to make sure I didn't miss it. That night, we all had trouble sleeping. And my mom still has trouble sleeping. I don't know what would have happened to us if we hadn't seen him and driven away. Be careful at stoplights in the middle of the night, yeah?
In our final story, an unknown creature emerges from the dark. Narrated by Lydia Paxton from Reddit user M3V1Love.
This story includes me. You can call me V. My best friend, I'll call her D. And my guy friend, I'll call him R. This story takes place when we were all young teenagers, like 13 and 14. We were hanging out at Dee's house. She lives in the Appalachian Mountains and her house is surrounded by forest. We were just chilling, playing video games and eating pizza, when we suddenly heard her dogs start barking outside. The dogs usually never barked, and if they did, they wouldn't be barking at anyone since Dee lived in a very secluded place. We all got up and looked outside. There was nothing unusual out there. We figured it was probably just a bear or a squirrel or something and went back to our video games. As the night wore on, we all started to feel a little weird. It's not a feeling that's easy to describe, but we were all kind of on edge and jumpy. Dee thought that some fresh air might be good for us, so we went out onto the balcony as the sun was setting. It was a beautiful sunset that night. We started telling ghost stories about the Appalachian Mountains, and Dee mentioned that her favorite place was a spot where indigenous people had been killed many, many years ago. It gave me the chills, and I was even more on edge than before. We went back into Dee's room and decided to burn some sage and rosemary to ward off anything that might be lurking around. And that is when things got really weird. It was now around 8 p.m. and we went back out onto the balcony. It was pitch black outside, The only things we could see were the things that were illuminated by the house lights. Then, the dog started barking again. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. We looked out into the darkness but couldn't see anything. The dog's barking became louder and more aggressive. Suddenly, something ran out of the woods. It looked almost exactly like one of Dee's dogs, but its eyes were black and it was running strangely, almost like its legs weren't meant for its skin. We couldn't believe what we saw. The three of us ran inside and slammed the door shut. We could hear it screaming and scratching at the door. Whatever it was, wanted inside. We had our backs up against the door, holding it closed. Then it stopped. The screaming, the scratching, the dogs barking, all of it stopped. The silence was deafening. We ran into Dee's room and closed the door. Just as soon as we thought we were safe, R started to scream. Dee's desk lamp was floating about a foot off her desk. Me and Dee started to cry, and just like that, the lamp crashed back down onto her desk. Although the three of us were together, it felt like the walls had eyes. We were being watched. The silence was broken by what sounded like humming and whistling, coming from the forest. We looked out her window, and at first, we didn't see anything. Then, it stepped into the light. We were all frozen with fear. It was tall and lanky, like a human spider. It had a long face with an abnormal smile and big, pitch-black eyes. It gazed at us while it whistled its tune. We backed away from the window and huddled down low where it couldn't see us anymore. We stayed that way for the rest of the night. We all passed out at some point because we woke up to the sunlight shining in her window. Shortly after that, my parents came to pick up me and R. As we were getting in the car, it felt like we were still being watched. But by what? We will never know.
New episodes of Disturbed drop every Thursday. If you love the show, consider becoming a member to access early and ad-free episodes. There you can also access our exclusive monthly series, A Night by the Campfire, where we share the scariest stories we can find from professional authors. A few episodes have been released here for free, so scroll down and listen. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed. If you have a story you'd like to share, email us at mystory@disturbedpodcast.com or post on our subreddit, r/disturbedpodcast. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review. Disturbed is a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more true crime and paranormal shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Our producer is Declan Roars. Audio engineering by Nathan Corson, Sean Rule Hoffman, and Will Pritz. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Bridget Coyne is our executive producer. Until next time, stay safe out there.
Picture yourself alone in the middle of nowhere, and there's somebody following you.
He went on his way, we so thought, and then we went on ours. But in reality, he really followed us up there.
On Deadly Nightmares, the true crime podcast from ID, listen to real stories of ordinary people stalked by serial killers and attackers.
Please, tell me we're not gonna die.
Listen to Deadly Nightmares on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you have a dark curiosity? Heart Starts Pounding, Horrors, Hauntings, and Mysteries is a weekly podcast hosted by me, Kaylin Moore. Each week, I'll take you on a dark journey through terrifying true urban legends, bizarre true crime cases, chilling tales of backwoods horror, and more. So if you're looking to join a passionate community of the darkly curious, check out Heart Starts Pounding on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, stay curious.